Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, it is Friday when I'm recording this, end of the day. I am kind of wrapping up. Never really have a weekend per se, which I don't mind necessarily, but I don't know, I would much rather be working on my own stuff than stuff for other people. And I guess this is something that everybody kind of feels like, but it just gets to me sometimes. I mean, I feel like there's so much more that I could be doing that's, so much better of a use of my time, which is extremely finite. And I'm acutely aware of just how brief the time that we get is. But anyway, gonna do this because A, had lunch with Gil today. Told him I would do one. And B, well, it's the end of the week. I'd like to get one in the bank for the week. And see, I do always have stuff that I want to talk about. So I have a kind of growing list of topics, and that list is growing much faster than I'm making these. So I'm not currently in danger of running out of one. But whenever I start one, I kind of it's not that I'm struggling to know which one to do. It's that I'm struggling to know. I guess it is that I'm struggling to know which one to do because I've got, not that I have a paucity of them, but I have too many. Um, Thought about doing another one on jobs because today I saw a video. I see periodically like people share videos of Steve Jobs. I have a lot of thoughts on him and kind of his place in history and in my life and all of this kind of stuff. Um, and I've talked a lot about that. I don't really want to go too much over it again. So I thought, nah, I'm going to wait on that. But it was from the Crazy Ones ad, and or rather the thing where he's actually talking about that, which is a video I highly recommend watching if you haven't seen it somehow. It's a really great presentation. I think it says a lot. The Think Different campaign was pretty significant, at least in my view, and certainly like this idea that as a company, and really, I mean, you think you have a noisy world, it's noisier now than it was then, and people will really remember like one thing from you. They probably, if even that, that's like, if you're lucky, they'll kind of put you in a box, and that's that box has one word on it, and or maybe two in their case. Think Different. It really does kind of behoove you to think, what is the message that you want to convey to people? If you're going to get out there and tell people this is the message, what is it? What do you want people to have that box that they put you in labeled? And I do realize none of us really fit in a box per se, but everyone puts you in a box. Whenever you meet somebody, whenever you talk to them, whenever you encounter them, there's a certain moment where they're like, what is this? This is new. And then as soon as they can, I know what category you are, put you in that box. And I'm really convinced that a lot of what we can control is not that they're going to put us in a box, but which box they're going to put us in. And I do think there's something to be said for picking a box that works well for us. You can't pick a box that, like, I can't pick the Charles Barkley box, or the Michael Jordan box. Little too short. Definitely not that athletic. My personality is very different. Not going to work for me. I could try to push it, but it's not going to. So I have a set of boxes that I can reasonably think about having people put me in. And they could certainly create a new box, although that's really hard. And probably, it's not going to happen, or if they do, they're going to first put you in a tentative box, and then later on, as they learn more, as you get to know somebody, the box does expand. But if you know someone casually, especially, they get in a box early on, and they don't change boxes very easily. It's extremely hard. I mean, this is like pronouns with people. If you meet somebody and they go by she, her, and then they change that to they, them, that becomes a much harder transition in my experience than if they start out as they, them. or vice versa. Whatever you start with. I always go back to, I had a friend, I guess I wouldn't know, I don't know if I would say past tense. We never like broke up the friendship. It just kind of like over time drifted apart. But I had a couple friends years ago, and one was, I was gonna say Mexican, technically Mexican, although like she was born in Hermosillo, but her parents brought her here when she was a baby, like a couple years old. Didn't really like, you know, about as Mexican as I am Spanish, frankly. Although I was born in the U.S., but yeah, maybe a little bit more because her parents spoke Spanish around the home, but yeah, basically American as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, she did speak Spanish, was very fluent, spoke French, also fluent. I had another friend who was French, and she was fluent in Spanish, fluent in English, and fluent in French. Both of them, all three. They were roommates, and somehow they started speaking in English together. Three languages, started English. And once they got started in that, even though all of these other languages were there, probably like 98, 99% of the conversations they would have would be in English. It's something about our brains. I think it's like a caching kind of thing, but we decide something, and then once we've decided it, okay, with this person, English, and now it's done. And getting out of that, really hard. I've only had a limited experience with that myself, but I've definitely, when I lived in France, noticed, there are people, if you could get the French going right away, you'd speak in French. But otherwise, the French was a struggle for me. Almost everybody spoke, even the people that don't speak much English speak much better English than I would speak French. It's kind of sad, but we'd start in English and then, or start in French, hiccup to English. And then once you're in the English rut, even if you try, even if you're both trying, really hard to get out of. But anyway, the thing he was thinking about was really like what box you could put Apple in. And it's kind of a beautiful campaign. I think, it's an ad campaign. It's not like, revolutionary philosophy or something, but it's an interesting thing, I think, at least, for me, from my perspective. People really like it. If you haven't seen the presentation that he gives, and certainly if you haven't seen the Think Different ads, it's worth checking. But again, I'm not going to talk too much about him. Probably have already talked too much about him. And I do notice that a lot of people, and this kind of makes me sad actually, but so many people have kind of taken up the Jobs mantle that it's, I almost don't want to talk about him, because even though I like him a lot, and even though meant a lot to me and kind of had a very important place in my life, and I'm certainly influenced by the stuff that he's done. Yeah, when you start seeing the Microsoft CEO and the Google CEO and a bunch of other people just aping him and saying stuff that sounds like him, dressing a little bit like him, and then you see the stuff that they're coming out with that is distinctly not aligned with the philosophy that they're espousing. You kind of don't. To me, it's just like tainted a little bit. It's like there are so many people now who have rediscovered George Carlin, and George Carlin was probably my first, favorite comedian, and certainly, maybe even still, my favorite comedian, even though I've not watched one of his specials in probably a decade. But he was the first celebrity who died who I really felt. In my life, obviously, I've seen a lot of people come and go. George Carlin was the first one where his death really just hit me like, not like my dad's exactly, but still like a close friend or relative. And, really felt like someone I knew was gone. But now so many people have taken up George Carlin, and a lot of them, I'm not saying that they're not, obviously he's not here to speak for himself. I kind of think everyone, if I repeat Plato, if I repeat Voltaire or whatever, I'm using them to my own end. Everybody does this. Whenever you're saying something, you're saying it for yourself, even if you're influenced by or directly quoting somebody from the past. Just necessarily. You're selecting that, you're framing it in a certain way, you're presenting it in a certain way. Yeah. So everybody's doing that. But the way that they're doing Carlin, the way that people do jobs, just it kind of bums me out a little bit, honestly. Not that it's not, I mean, it doesn't matter, it doesn't really change who these people are to me or who they actually were. But you see that and you're like, I just don't feel right. First off, I don't feel right participating in that. And second, the way that I see them and the way that the things that they meant to me are different enough from the things that people, seem to have taken from them that I don't really, and also certainly the people who, kind of are derived from them in some way, I'm not a huge fan of. So I see that and I'm like, I'm just gonna not quite close the book on these people, but I'm definitely not going to like spend a ton of time on them. Having just spent the first 15 minutes of this talking about them, but never mind that now. So what I do want to talk about today is actually, the word is beta. And I debated about using just the capital Greek beta, which looks like a capital B and would be confusing if anyone actually cared about that. Probably would amuse me. I have a weird thing where I like, one of the funniest things to me is a joke that literally nobody gets. Like there's the 1%er, which is, like 99% of people that joke's gonna fall flat on because they're gonna miss it. But the 1% of the people will like it and they'll appreciate it. And then there's like the 99.999%er. I like, my favorite jokes are kind of the 1 in about 7-8 billion people kind of joke. So the person, one person out of every 7 or 8 billion people gets it. Those often to me are the funniest. I don't know why. I kind of feel like it makes me a little bit of an asshole because it's like, why does that amuse me so much? But it just tickles me in such a way. But it's kind of silly. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call it just beta. Probably capital beta. Probably not the lowercase beta. But, and probably the word, not the letter. More thought going into this now than you probably have taken from it. But I'm calling it beta partly because of the jobs thing, but mostly because I feel like everything that I deal with, everything that probably really the bulk of our world is built around, just feels really more like alpha level kind of stuff. But to be generous, let's call it beta. It feels like, whether it's our government, which just does not, there are so many fundamental problems with the way that we run government. And maybe even the fundamental assumption that democracy is a good thing. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not, but there's enough evidence that I think it's not a complete slam dunk that democracy is the best possible government. There is the saying, it's the worst possible government except for every other one. I don't know that that's true. I certainly don't know of a better one, or there's none that comes to mind, but you see the just gullibility of people, the willingness to continually reelect just terrible people, the lack of consequences, the essential disconnect between the things that make people electable and popular and the things that really lead to good governance. And you see that and you're kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is not the best plan. I don't know what would be. I think, I don't have a particular political affiliation or identification. I do like kind of Bernie's democratic socialism, with the democratic thing in there, of course, I definitely feel like people should have, a decent say in their own autonomy. It seems like, like the antithesis of, say, Britney Spears' situation. People really like and really almost need, and I think this is true of almost, like by definition, sentient beings, like a certain amount of autonomy. Boundaries are good within reason, like guardrails, Nothing that's you're running into every day, but there are certain things where like you can't just take a gun and start pointing it at a crowd and shooting it. There are some guardrails that we should have. I personally think guns, despite the fact that 20 million were sold in the US last year, I'm personally, do not think these are a thing that we need or should want as a society. Maybe there was a time hundreds of years ago when they probably made sense, but it's a battle that I don't even feel like fighting, because it feels like there are more guns than people in this country by a significant margin. And at a certain point, like, I don't even know what the fuck you can do about that. And that means there are currently just constant, incessant mass shootings. And I'm not throwing my hands up exactly, but I'm definitely like tabling it, because I don't know what the fuck you can do, because there are people who are so dedicated to the idea, the sick kind of demented idea that they need as their own personal right, the ability to have essentially, I call it this flippantly, but I really think it's what it is, a point and click murder remote. It is a device which is designed expressly, gun's just a tool. A gun is a tool designed to kill. A gun is a tool designed to take a tiny piece of metal, fling it really fast into something, and cause mortal damage. Fundamentally, that is what they are. When you have people just not even talking about them in that way, they're like, oh, it's an object like a hammer. It's like, just kind of, come on. Can we at least, we're adults here. We don't have to pretend. You don't have to have this weird veil of, just bullshit. It is a murder weapon. That is what it is for. Now you can make an argument, there's certainly a cogent argument to be made, that they're useful or necessary for certain things. You could make an argument that it's not bad to have everybody have the ability to point at someone else in their life with as much thought as I think of, like turning off the TV. I don't agree with that. I think it's kind of fucked in the head, frankly. I think it's insane. And I will say, like, I always want to say insane or crazy, this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to be ableist, but they're just, for that idea, I don't think there's an alternate word that really, it's like people who want you not to say the word fuck, frankly. When I was a kid, I thought about this. I wanted to be respectful, I wanted to be, like, not piss people off. And then I thought a lot about it, and I'm like, it's dumb. People make this argument like, oh, if you're using foul language, the big, then you don't know your vocabulary is limited or your intelligence is limited. What fucking bullshit, honestly. Words are words. Now, there are some words that I would never use. The N-word, I don't think I would ever utter. Even coming close to it in a song or something, the idea of it just, it's like, I'm averse to it. There are certain words that just, the F word. And when I say that, I mean the 3-letter F word, not fuck by any means. I can talk about it as like a bundle of sticks, or the UK version for cigarette, although I never would have either of those. Concepts really come to mind, but in the sense that people use it, especially as a derogatory term, it just never would occur to me. It's not even that I'm like, I really want to say this word, but I'm holding back. It just does not occur to me to say. Which is, and I understand, I'm not typical, I'm not everybody, but it's like the fucking mask thing. The mask, I don't like them either. I'm not like, oh boy, I get to wear a mask. No, it's annoying. It's not the most comfortable thing. And if you wear an N95 mask, it is, I'm not saying it's hard to breathe, but it's definitely, takes a little bit more effort than it does with a normal mask or with no mask. But the mask is not that big of a fucking deal, you know? And it's not just like, oh, Scott, you're weird. No, it's just not a big deal. Not using certain language that is extremely offensive to certain people, like that. And you're like, well, Scott, some people are so offended by fuck. Well, fuck them. There's a huge difference between a word that is a slur, that is literally its intent and purpose. This is like the fucking gun. Gun is meant by design to shoot somebody, to kill them. Well, you could use it for target. Yeah, you could, but that's not what it's for. You can use it to open a fucking Coke bottle, but that's not what it's for. Saying fuck is, seasoning. It's just a word. It's not sitting there trying to hurt somebody. It's not a weapon, so to speak. The N word, really, especially when said in a certain way by a certain person, is really, like deeply caustic. It's an implement. It's a weapon. It's intended, to hurt somebody. And this is one place. I mean, not to go back to Carlin, but Carlin has a little bit on this, why it's not such a bad word, and why you don't mind if Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy is saying it, because they are, and then in his word, N-words. And then he's using it, and I'm sitting there and I'm going like, even as a kid, it just irked me. And the more that I've thought about it, the more I've reflected on it, I feel like this is a word that I just don't ever need to use. And I feel a little weird about people who feel compelled to use it. It's like, what does that say about you? Why do you need this word? If you're Quentin Tarantino, why is it so important to you to throw this around? I'm not even necessarily judging you. It's more a curiosity, concern maybe? I don't even know. But is he trying to make a point of it? Is he trying to say, it's not that big of a deal? Is he trying to say it's okay for him because of how he was raised? Or I don't know. I really don't give a fucking shit. I don't like it. I don't. I watch Hateful Eight, and I think it's a pretty good movie. But, and I can deal with it on a limited basis. I mean, it's not even directed at me, obviously. But I can deal with it in like Pulp Fiction or something like this. Like it's there, and it does jar my ears a little bit, but it's not like the Hateful Eight kind of thing. He's just like beating a fucking dead horse with it, just bang, bang, bang. And you're listening to this and you're like, why, man? Come on, just fucking ease up a little bit, It's like the people with the fucking fireworks too. I mean, it's July 9th, so last weekend was 4th of July. And people have fireworks, and I get that, your life is really dull and you got nothing going on, and it's all you can do to continue existing, just to have your entertainment be little explosives that are, like noisemakers and blowing shit up. I get it, but I just don't respect it at all. I don't like it. I find fireworks boring, to be fair. So I'm not probably the person to be judging this stuff, but I see that, and I know people burn to death because people have to have these fucking things. I know, dogs, veterans are a little traumatized by them. To me, it's annoying, and you have this cloud of smoke that's not necessary. But it's just like, is it really necessary to have something that literally does kill people? And it's not like, from a freak accident. Every 4th of July, you read about some fire someplace, or many, often too many to bother reading about. And it's like, people died because some asshole wanted to blow shit up. I'm not really okay with that. I get it, your freedom and all that stuff, but there are certain freedoms that are just not worth having, really, or not worth, like I would say, maybe it's cool to blow stuff up. I get, you know, kind of the appeal, I guess, but I wouldn't get these things because I just don't really want to take the risk. I see the risk, I see the reward. The reward is nil. The risk, now granted, it's not that common of an occurrence in terms of statistics, but tell that to the people who died. Yeah. And there are lots of things that you can do with that, but yeah. So anyway, getting back to this beta idea, I see, you know, and the reason actually that this came up was friend BG, who, or Brian, who also, you know, watches this or listens to it, I guess, on 2x, incidentally. So if you're listening to this and you find it too slow, maybe talking to you, Mom. But anyone else, if you're listening to this and you find it slow, hit the 2x. It's very intelligible and you might find it more enjoyable. But backing from that, he was talking recently about, not just recently, but a few times, Tesla running this beta test of their air quotes full self-driving, which is extremely generous market speak. It is one thing I like to contrast Jobs and Musk. There are many differences between the two. People kind of frame Musk in the same, you know, idea as Jobs, but Jobs didn't really sell, you know, bullshit so much. He was a marketeer. There's a thing that all marketeers are liars, but you know, he really kind of sold stuff that had some kind of grounding in reality. And even though, like, I have plenty of complaints about Apple's, there's not a lot of stuff that they claim to do that was just pure fantasy. Musk, you know, and granted, there's the whole fake it till you make it and say things that are aspirational, throw your hat over the wall, and then that motivates you to do it. Yes, but Musk sells stuff that does not exist and may never exist. You know, like this full self-driving stuff, which again, like a fucking idiot, I paid, you know, I didn't pay 10 grand, but I paid $7,000 to have full self-driving added to my Model 3. I bought a car from him, first of all, which is, you know, I have really mixed feelings on that. I go back and forth, but yeah, I paid for this thing. Why? I don't know. I have some kind of disorder that makes me need beta software. All of my phones, my computers, all of this stuff is running pre-release software because I can't tolerate having things like work. You know, just having stuff that's reliable and consistent. That seems horrible to me somehow. So I need to torture myself a little bit everywhere with everything I do. It needs to not quite work, you know, not quite be finished. It's like it's a bizarre aspect of me. But Musk sells stuff that just does not exist, like this full self-driving. Now, sometimes it's like, oh, we're going to make a rocket that lands vertically. And he actually does it. Well, his engineering team does it. I don't think he did too much of that. And that's kind of cool, actually. Sometimes it's just pure bullshit. And sometimes it's even a terrible idea. You know, like the Hyperloop, the Boring Company, you know, a lot of things that just are frankly dumb. Like, and I really hate actually like the Boring Company and to some extent Tesla and all of these things really pushing against public transit and for like personal vehicles and tunnels. It's not efficient. It doesn't make any sense. It's just not really a good solution. I've lived, I was going to say in cities, but I lived in Paris, which is a place where there's a really decent public transit system. I mean, the metro is not perfect by any means, but between the metro and the buses, all of this stuff, they have a pretty decent public transit system. And it's kind of nice. You know, you can go around, you get your Navigo pass, and you just go around and the city is just sort of open to you. You can walk around, and then when you're done walking, you can hop on a train, go anywhere. It's actually a really much better way to live. Not having a car Having a car is nice for certain things where you really need a car, which is mainly just getting like out into the country or something, or if you live in a place like Phoenix where not having a car here is physically painful. And even if you're taking the bus, our bus system is not terrible, um, but it's also like you're sitting at the station forever. The scale of everything is so big. Things are not, we don't have like a high speed commuter network. So you get on the bus and it can take like an hour to get across town. And granted, I did have that sometimes, like going all the way across Paris took like an hour, rush hour. Um, but that's like several train changes, and mainly because it's not a direct shot. Um, Most of the time there, you'd not be doing it. If you worked downtown and you tried to live where I live, uh, you'd be torturing yourself. You might as well just punch yourself in the face. Like there's no sane reason to do it. And I gotta tell you, it's a much nicer world if everything is, first off, if public architecture, public art is all done well, you have good plants and all this kind of stuff, and also you have public transit and you have walkable city. It's nice. It's much better than Musk's kind of distorted version where it's like everybody has their own private subway station in their basement, and you get, and now granted, if you lived out in the fucking middle of nowhere and you could have your own private like tube station down below, just hop in that and zip over to town, that's different. But if you're living in the middle of Los Angeles, having the ability to just shoot your car and, in his words, teleport from one place to another, it's nice on an individual, selfish basis if you are the person who it's nice for, and for the vast majority of people, not so nice. And also, I mean, it's a city. There are many reasons why I do not live in LA, despite my mom and sister living there. One of the big ones is just that like parking is torture there. It sucks fucking hairy goat taint. It is, it's just lame. I mean, you drive in traffic, which is terrible. Even though LA's traffic is notorious for being terrible, it's worse than you think. And then once you get someplace, you either have to fuck around and try to find a place to park and decipher the crazy sign that has, like, well, between 10 and 2, Monday through Thursday, except for other alternating, like even Wednesdays, you can't do this. And between this time and that, you have this fucking SAT question for a sign that you have to sit there and look at in traffic and under this to decide if you can park there or not. And that's if you're lucky. Or you give it to a valet, which, if you have a nice car with memory, at least it's not that bad, because they can fuck around. They'll get in your car, and obviously, the valet needs to be comfortable too. So I'm not even blaming them. It's just them doing their job. But get in the car, and even if they drive it to a place you could easily have driven yourself, which annoys me, I'd rather drive it myself. But if you have mechanical adjustments with no memory, they fuck with the car and then park it and then come back, and then you have to fuck with it. And if you're like me, I spend a long time dialing things in, getting them just so that I'm happy with them. And then you fuck with it, and now it's like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, granted, I have a car now that has memory, not as big of a deal, but I would just assume never use valet. I like walking. I like parking myself. Given my druthers wouldn't even have a car, to be honest. I would have, I'd live someplace walkable. It's with good public transit. And, ideally, I mean, there are some really good pieces of art where they show sort of the roads as giant cliffs. They're kind of showing how much of our world is just dedicated to cars, how the world is made not for us, but for cars. And it's crazy. You don't realize like how much space is wasted for these things. And you could build a much better world where you have, like green spaces and everything is walkable. Every block or two, you have like a nice train station, which is very accessible. You know, if you're in a wheelchair or something, you can roll over there, no problem. You can easily walk to it in any kind of weather. Get in, it's nice. It's just a much better world where you do that. Everything looks cleaner. Everything is, you know, it's frustrating to see what the world could be like, and then to see how stupid and shitty it is for no fucking reason. You know, and is this because the world is a beta? I don't know. You know, it's like people are, I don't know. To some extent with software, you can understand that it's very complicated, a lot of moving parts, and it's really invisible, largely. Like you only see kind of the surfaces of it. And so it's understandable why so much software sucks. You know, I use a program called Altium, and this program costs, I don't even know how much it is, but it's thousands of dollars for every seat for every year. And it's like 20-year-old program or something like this, so pretty mature. And it crashes all the time. It is buggy. It's just stunningly bad. And it's one of the best things out there. So it's like you use it because you have to, and because it actually is much better than the alternatives that I've tried, many of which are also quite expensive. But yeah, at the same time, you look at that and you're like, how is it this shitty? Something this old and this mature. And never mind if you get to something like Fusion 360, or as I prefer, Fusion 350, which is just a flaming turd. And it's a frustrating one because it's almost it's been for a long time, probably like a decade now, so close to almost being a great program, and it has all these problems that they never fix. They're always kind of racing to lay more track, but never, you know, if it was literal train track and bridges and hard infrastructure, it'd all be like janky and things not quite aligned and uneven, and you know, you'd look at it and it'd be like, oh shit, I'm not getting on that thing. There's no way I'm going over that bridge. That tower looks like it's just, you know, held up. You know, I don't even know how it's held up. It almost looks like it shouldn't physically work. It's like a Jenga thing that, you know, didn't fall, but by all rights should have. You look at that and you're like, holy shit. And then this is all software for the most part, even really well-crafted software, but especially like consumer level software that's not avionics or life support kind of stuff. And yeah, it's so much of the world is this, and it doesn't need to be. We could do a much better job, and it just bugs me. It really bugs me. I'm bothered also, like, you know, we have this active climate catastrophe, slow-moving climate catastrophe, and you know, I see how little people did for the pandemic and how much people did, even the people who actually like buckled down and did stuff and tried, they're kind of like, okay, I'm done. You know, that's good enough. Pandemic is still ongoing. Thank you very much. But you know, just kind of like, we're moving on now. And yeah, as soon as I could get vaccinated, I did. I was like, you know, refreshing like it was a fucking iPhone coming. And you know, I got vaccinated. But I still am aware that, you know, there is a pandemic going on, and so many people seem not to be, you know. And I understand, like, to some extent, there's this idea that some people have that it's just never going to end, which is not true. There will be an end to it. But you have a lot of people, I think, that are just kind of like, I'm tired of it, you know. This wasn't fun. And then you think, well, okay, you have the current state of the world, and we're on track to have a much worse climate catastrophe happen than we currently have. And, you know, like, this is just kind of warming up. And, yeah, you look at that and you're like, you could make a few small sacrifices and it would be much better. But instead of that, we're just going to keep going, you know, double down, not going to make any changes. And even if you make some small sacrifices, you kind of relegate it to individual choices that really don't amount to much. and that also people will kind of go like, well, okay, not to make fun of myself here, but like, oh, I had a Prius for a long time. Now it's okay for me to burn a lot of avgas and fly. This is the kind of, I'm somebody who cares about this shit, and this is the kind of deal that I make with myself. I mean, think about people who don't give a fuck, how bad that is. I'm certainly trying to say here, like, I'm as guilty as a lot of people. But it's just, I don't know, it's very problematic. Now, I don't really have a conclusion to this, and I go back and forth, like, I do talk about this a lot, but I see really well-produced videos and podcasts and this kind of stuff, and always kind of want to do it, and I never really can get it together to do the editing and all this kind of stuff, or any of the things that would be required to get there. And it's interesting because I just, it obviously does not matter that much to me. And also, if I did it, it's not really the style that I'm going for. But there is a way to make this much better than it is. And kind of feel like, I feel like I'm letting you down when I do this, because it's like, you're watching or listening, and I'm not doing, it's not that I'm not doing an okay job, but I feel like I could be doing so much better, and I'm not doing as much as I could. I definitely could be putting a lot more time and effort into it, and well, in theory at least, I guess practically speaking, my time is just like whittled away to a ridiculously small amount. So I to give myself a little bit of defense there, I don't have that much time to be doing that stuff, but I kind of wish that I was, because I do feel like I could be doing a much better job here. I feel like also, I'm not somebody who would work for a script well at all, but there is something to be said to have, kind of the beats worked out before. The fact that I'm so tired too, like all the time, I can feel like my momentum is not there, and it's annoying to me. It's like, it's just like walking through a swamp, and you can start moving, but when you start moving, you're like facing so much drag. Wearing snowshoes, you're facing so much drag that you just, everything takes 10 times more effort than it normally would. And even if you start moving, if you pause at all, you're just like, you hit a brick wall. And versus like normally I can just walk forever. I mean, not literally, but I can walk a long time. I've walked across Paris many, many times, and I like doing that. Walking in the snow, not as much fun. This feels like walking in the snow. I want to do it. I want to do a better job, and yet I just, the chronic insomnia just permeates every aspect of my life, and I do think, and I kind of hope this is right. Brian has suggested that maybe this is like a trauma response, and it's like due to stress and anxiety and this kind of thing, and it's something that kind of has a long lag time between the time that the things are not so bad and when I get better. Although it's been so long, I really, at the moment, I struggle to imagine this ever getting better. It's just, even if I suddenly found myself in a situation where I never had to worry about money again, never, if I wanted to, I wouldn't have to work at all. I could just like sit on my ass or do whatever, and was completely unbounded by the constraints that annoy me and frustrate me in life. Even then, I don't think I would sleep that much, but I wish I thought that I did. I'd love to try the experiment, but and it's just, it's a bummer. So on that cheerful note, I am going to take off because end of the day, Friday, and I gotta go downtown. So with that, thank you for listening or watching. I always do appreciate it. I do, hope that it's, I mean, it's a work in progress, but I hope that it's not bad. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope somewhat interesting. I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about that I missed, and it's weird how that happens. I also am going to kind of slightly blame the sleepiness, but then the free form thing is it's not helping it probably. So anyway, with that, thank you very much. 再见。